This water is free. In fact, the company's name is literally called FreeWater. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking what every single person before you who heard this is thinking. Nothing is actually free. There's always some catch. But FreeWater isn't just setting out to give away free canned water. They believe this is the first step to building an ecosystem centered around negatively priced food and beverages that can be given away for free, all while their company still makes money. Okay, I'm not going to be one of those creators that drags this out to the 7-minute mark. What's the catch? Well, FreeWater makes their money with the ads that are plastered on the water bottles. The company pays for the bottles and the water, but the ads they sell on the bottle allow for the water to pay for itself and then some. And according to Joshua Cliffords, their CEO and founder, they make more money doing this than they would if they just sold bottled water like every other company out there. And the irony of all of this is Josh is quoted saying,
"I hate ads. I hate the advertising industry. I really don't like what it stands for personally."
But here's the thing. Josh believes that as this business model scales, the company can actually continue this model where they give away items for free, but doing so without having any ads. But we'll come back to that later, because in order to understand how such a polarizing idea came to be, we need to look back at when Joshua took a 3-year-long vacation to tour the world. Over the course of visiting the first half of the countries on his list, he noticed one common theme. Taxis and Uber drivers kept scamming him. And it even got to a point where one of them threatened his life with a knife. From that point on, he jokingly decided to dedicate his life to putting these guys out of business by attempting to run a free taxi service that subsidizes the cost with advertisements. However, once he got to Rome, he ended up meeting 2 Nigerian men and learned of their story and how awful it was for them to live there and why they had to get out of their own country. This inspired him so much that he decided to end his trip early and start a nonprofit called Save the Refugees, where he claims they've helped over 10,000 people. Of the many people he helped and talked to, around a quarter of them say that they had to leave their home country because they couldn't get access to food, water, or medicine. Now, during this time, he still wanted to work on his taxi idea, but he had gotten sidetracked with some other life events. But one day, he was in New York City filming an ad for free taxi, where he was interviewing random people on the street to see if they wanted to take a ride in this free taxi. And his cameraman ended up getting thirsty. So Josh walks into a convenience store and sees some boxed water. And then he remembered that missing people used to be put on the sides of milk cartons. And he thought that the technology to put photogenic quality on packaging surely had improved since then. And he also knew that nearly everyone had a smartphone these days with a built-in QR code scanner. And then he remembered the people in Nigeria who didn't have access to water. And so the idea began. But that's all it was, just an idea. Because Josh would return home and have a conversation with his mom that would later change everything. She said, "Leave the car idea to the rich people and prove your idea using ads in order to create free products with the water company first." His mom thought that if he could make it work with this, it would allow him to break into other industries much easier. When he first tried to start up the water company, he was already $60,000 in debt and was thinking about honestly going bankrupt. And so during this time, he was driving Ubers late at night to try to save money to buy a pallet of water to distribute and try to get this to work. Unfortunately though, one night he got a call saying his mother had passed away, but this would be the turning point for the company. Joshua later received money from an insurance company in the amount of $130,000, and he used $60,000 of it to pay off his debts, as he knew this is what his mother would have wanted. Joshua then injected the majority of the rest of the funds into his project, slowly building the company into what it is today. Now, let's get into the actual details of how this company functions and the abnormalities of the business model. FreeWater's first batch of water produced didn't even have anything on the bottles. It just showed the company name, and it was given away for free by Joshua. Now, he was quite literally giving away free water and returning negative profit, but the goal was to show people that the business model worked despite not making any money. But here's how the business model works. In principle, FreeWater pays to have water bottled and distributed, but to make the money, they work with companies to put the advertisements on the bottles. They're selling space for ads. Of the profit they make per unit, 10 cents are donated to a charity that builds wells in developing countries. Now, consumers are weary of free products though, especially from companies that they're not really familiar with, which is a bit ironic. However, there's no doubt the idea here is revolutionary in the sense of how consumers are reacting to it.
What's wrong with it?
Nothing, it's natural spring water.
It's tap water.
No, spring water.
That's like Flint, Michigan water, or like is this like an actual spring water?
No, it's from a spring.
So how do you get it for free and then give it away for free?
Because we put ads on the bottle and that pays for everything.
Who paid the spring to give them the water?
We did.
You paid the spring.
With the help of the advertisers.
So the advertisers paid you for advertising space. You took that money, you bought the spring water, you put it in packaging, and then you're giving it out for free.
Exactly.
And you still make a profit off of that.
And we even donate 10 cents per bottle to charity.
You have enough profit to have 10 cents space on each bottle's profit in order to still make a profit and still give 10 cents to the charity people.
Exactly.
I don't believe you.
If you ever listen to Joshua speak, he consistently mentions selling his water for a negative price. But this sort of brings up the question, is this not just a profit? How can he sell something for less than free? I mean, after all, he's not paying the consumer to take the water, it's free. There are costs associated with giving away the water for free, but the business model works because the ads pay the company and allow for them to do this. Now, there are some examples in the world where certain sectors have actually paid consumers for a product or a service as opposed to how businesses traditionally work. However, in these cases, it's usually a very temporary thing. For instance, in the EU, there have been examples of negative interest rates in banking, as well as negative energy prices, where in some places in the EU and even in California, consumers received electricity for free and were paid as a result of an imbalance between supply and demand. In this example, while it is certainly not the norm for these brief instances, it's cheaper for utility companies to pay consumers for the excess in supply as opposed to shut down the plant and restart it when the supply has declined. There's also this idea in economics called the zero marginal cost theory. It describes that if one additional unit of product can be produced for nothing, it will result in unlimited profits. For example, this could be used to describe an e-commerce business that sells books. Once it's created, there are no additional production or delivery costs associated with each additional sale. Of course, it costs money to make the first unit, but in this theory, the additional copies are made for essentially nothing. However, like with any business, there are still aspects to it that will require costs. Now, in Joshua's case, he's selling water that is bottled, and this costs money and additional units will as well. There is an economy of scale aspect in this industry where the more he can make, the cheaper it can be to produce, but that doesn't mean it will cost nothing. However, Josh claims they make roughly 20 cents per unit in profit after their donation and after they've paid their employees. And he claims that the donation is always at least 10 cents, but can range from 10 to 16 cents per unit. He also anticipates that this profit margin can become much higher, and this is where things don't really add up to me. The future plan for FreeWater is very interesting because Joshua thinks that once his product grows, competitors such as Nestle will have to adopt this model as their products just won't make sense to sell for money anymore. FreeWater's goal is to get to a point where they can produce their own bottles, increasing the profit margins that they receive per unit of water sold. Joshua wants to create bottles out of more environmentally friendly resources before the larger players in the industry cut him off from the suppliers for the regular bottles. And he claims that they can make 60 cents for every unit sold as opposed to the 20 cents they are making now. Josh has said his plan is to become the Whole Foods of negatively priced goods. Now, as much as this sounds like a bunch of buzzwords, he claims water is just a vehicle in the early stages. Their real goal is to scale this to many more things. Currently, he said they're working on a free vending machine, and eventually they would like to have an entire grocery store. And Josh is confident this is only the beginning. He believes many other companies will eventually follow suit here, which is fascinating to me because he seems to really underestimate the comfortability of these traditional business models, many of which are behemoths today and are always willing to spend millions in order to protect their business models. Now, in the beginning, I mentioned that Josh claimed as this company grew, eventually this business model can work without the ads, but he never actually expanded on this in the interview where I heard him say it, which makes me very skeptical it's not actually a legitimate plan. But another potential problem that hasn't been mentioned is the very nature of the success of these ad campaigns on the bottles. In general, there are typically two different kinds of advertisements: awareness and conversion. In most cases here on YouTube, when you see a content creator promote a product or a service in their video, it's generally a conversion campaign. They'll mention things like scan this QR code or check out the link in the description. A lot of ads online tend to be conversion ads because of the very nature of being able to track where and when the traffic is coming from. These typically tend to come from smaller brands as well, so that they can definitively see a return on their ad spend. But bigger brands like Coca-Cola, McDonald's, or Nike generally use awareness campaigns. They want you to be thinking about them. Think billboards or TV commercials, where they're marketing the transformation of the functional benefits that their brand offers. Now, there's a lot of nuances behind this, but that's the gist. So if these smaller brands are marketing on FreeWater and not seeing a solid return on their ad spend, eventually the rates for these product placements will decrease, and this could have a significant impact on FreeWater's business model. These kinds of product placements are largely unproven in terms of their success, but Josh considers them as mini billboards. The only difference here is they're the modern day version, where companies are imprinting their own QR codes on these bottles and turning them into conversion campaigns. So while this method is still being proofed, the business plan of FreeWater seems Ouroboros. It eats itself the more it scales, and it works for low-cost goods, albeit important goods like water, but it can't work for everything out there. And if many of these things do become free at the expense of advertisers paying for the real estate and the attention, who's going to buy the products that the ads are for? Surely there's an argument out there that certain goods or services will always cost money, and that those will be the ones advertising. But for me, it's hard to envision that sort of economy. And don't get me wrong, in a lot of ways, it's cool that this company is giving away something like bottled water, and doing so without adding more plastic waste to our environment, as it's estimated only 9% of plastic actually gets recycled. But it remains to be seen how this company can reach its lofty and ambitious goals of selling many different goods for free. Now, on the topic of canned water, you're going to want to check out how this joke turned into a water company valued at $1.4 billion. I covered it in this video here. Thanks for watching. Peace.